The amber liquid swirled in Raka's glass as she watched another group of traders stumble through the cantina. Doors, they laughed too loud, slapped each other's backs, celebrated some deal. They closed on the station's upper levels. She took another sip and let the burn slide down her throat. This was her fifth drink tonight, or maybe her sixth. She'd stopped counting 3 cycles ago. Her corner booth at the edge station cantina had become something close to home. The seat cushion had molded to her shape over the months, knew the weight of her scale body, the way her tail curled around the bench support. Nobody sat here when she was gone. The other patrons had learned to give the exiled dragon woman her space. Raka traced a claw along the scarred table surface. Deep gouges marked where she'd let her anger slip one night after too many drinks and too many memories. The Talaran bartender hadn't complained. He just brought her another glass and a cloth to clean up the splinters. She was halfway through her next drink when the child appeared beside her table. Small hands gripped the table edge. Dark curly hair framed a round face with brown eyes that stared up at Rocco with pure wonder. The girl couldn't have been more than 7 standard years old, dressed in clothes that had been washed too many times and patched at the elbows. Are you a real dragon? The child asked that. Raka's first instinct was to bare her teeth to scare the small creature away. Children meant noise, questions, complications. Think she'd come to this forgotten station to avoid. Go away, Raka said. Her voice came out rougher than intended, deepened by drink and disuse. The child didn't move. She clutched his stuffed animal to her chest, something that might have been a bear once before time and travel wore it down to a shapeless brown lump. My name is Lily, the girl said. I'm lost. Raka turned her head away, stared at the wall behind the bar where bottles lined up in neat rows. Order, routine, numbness. That was all she wanted. The refugee center is on level 12. You can find it yourself. I've been to the refugee center, Lily said. She climbed onto the bench across from Raka without invitation. They said I have to wait there until they find a colony that will take me, but that's going to take months. And months, not my problem. Raka drained her glass and signaled the bartender for another. Lily set her stuffed animal on the table between them. The thing's button eyes were mismatched, one black and one blue, probably replaced at some point in its long life. His name is Patches, Lily said. My mom made him for me when I was really little. Raka said nothing. The bartender brought her drink. She paid with a credit chip and focused on the glass, the weight of it, the way condensation beaded on its surface. My parents had a freight ship, Lily continued. She spoke matter-of-factly, like she was reciting a lesson learned by heart. The Regioner, they carried supplies between stations. 3 stations ago, raiders attacked us. My parents hid me in the emergency pod. They didn't make it to the pods themselves. The cantina noise seemed too dim. Raka could hear her own breathing, slow and measured, the way dragons breathe when they were trying to control their emotions. Why are you telling me this? Raka asked. Lily pulled something from her pocket, a small data chip, scratched and worn. She placed it next to Patches on the table. This is all I have left for my mom. It has her shipping logs and some voice messages. I thought maybe if I could find someone who knew her, someone she worked with, they might want to help me. The refugee center people said nobody would care. They said freight haulers don't have time to track down orphans. Raka looked at the chip. Such a small thing to hold. Someone's entire history. You picked the wrong person, Raka said. I don't help anyone. You're sitting here all alone. Lily said that means you don't have anyone either. My mom used to say the loneliest people understand loneliness best. The words hit harder than Raka expected. She was lonely, lonelier than she'd ever been in her life. Dragons weren't meant for solitude. They lived in colonies surrounded by clutch siblings and elders, connected by bonds of honor and blood. Exile meant cutting all those bonds. It meant drifting through space alone, unwanted, forgotten. I can't help you, Raka said. But her voice had lost its edge. Will you at least look at the chip? Lily asked. Please, I just need to know if there's something there, anything that might help. Raka closed her eyes. Every instinct told her to refuse to send this child away, to go back to her drinks in her corner booth and her slow slide into forgetting. But something in Lily's voice, that careful hope wrapped in resignation, reminded her of herself. The day her colony elders had pronounced her exile, the day she'd stood alone before them and refused to bend. One look, Raka said. She held out her hand. Give me the chip, I'll scan it, then you go back to the refugee center and forget you met me. Lily's face lit up. She pushed the chip across the table. Raka picked it up carefully between two claws, such a fragile thing, and pulled out her personal scanner. The data loaded slowly. Shipping manifests appeared first. Route schedules, cargo inventories, standard freight hauler records, then personal logs, voice messages marked with dates and timestamps. Raka scrolled through the files, her trained eye picking out patterns, connections, the habits of someone who ran regular routes. Then she saw it, a shipping entry that made her stop scrolling. Cargo listed as machine parts, but the weight ratios were wrong. The pickup point was in a sector known for smuggling. The delivery coordinates weren't for any registered station. Where did her parents die? Raka asked. System J447. Lily said. The refugee center said it was random raiders. Raka looked at the log entries again. The last 3 runs before the attack, all showing the same irregularities. Diana Reed had stumbled onto something worth killing. For this wasn't random, Raka said. Quietly, Raka slammed her fist on the processing counter hard enough to make the Century clerk jump. Behind her, Lily stood quietly. Patches clutched her chest, watching the exchange with those 2 old eyes. 6 to 8 months. You expect a 7-year-old child to wait in temporary housing for 6 to 8 months. Clerk's 3 stocks swiveled independently, a sign of stress in Centuries were understaffed. Budget cuts. There are protocols. The child will be fed, sheltered, educated while she waits for colony placement with 40 other orphans in one facility. Raka growled. She'd seen the temporary housing block, rows of bunks, communal meals, children warehoused like cargo, waiting for shipment. It's the best we can offer, the clerk said, his primary eye stalk focused on his screen, avoiding Raka's gaze. Unless you're volunteering for guardianship. The question hung in the air. Raka felt Lily's eyes on her back. She'd come here to drop the child off, to walk away, to return to her corner booth and her drinks in her solitude. That was the plan. Look at the chip, confirm her suspicions, hand everything over to station authorities and forget, but station authorities were the problem. If Diana Reed had discovered smuggling operations, if her death wasn't random, then someone on this station had let it happen, maybe even helped it happen. How long does guardianship processing take? Raka heard herself ask, the clerk's eye stalks all turned toward her now. For temporary emergency guardianship, immediate approval for existing station residents in good standing, you need to provide housing, food, basic care. Reviews every 30 days. Raka looked down at Lily. The child hadn't said a word, hadn't begged or pleaded. She just waited, used a disappointment, prepare for it, process it, Raka said. Temporary guardianship, I'll sort this mess out and find her proper placement. 20 minutes later, Raka walked out of the refugee center with Lily following. Close behind, the child's small hand had found Raka's larger one, scaled and clawed and held on tight. Thank you, Lily whispered. Don't thank me yet, Raka muttered. I don't even know what I'm doing. Her quarters were on level 8 in the cheaper residential section, where single inhabitants paid by the cycle, one-room basic facilities, a sleep alcove designed for medium-sized species. She modified it when she first arrived, removed the standard bed, and installed a heating mat more suited to dragon physiology. Lily stood in the doorway, taking it all in. The bare walls, the minimal furniture, the distinct lack of anything personal or welcoming. Is this where you live? She asked. Yes. Raka moved to the storage locker and pulled out cargo blankets. You can sleep here. She pointed to a corner. I'll make it comfortable. She piled blankets into a makeshift nest, the way dragon younglings preferred. Then she realized human children probably needed something different. She'd never spent time around humans before, never needed to. Her colony avoided Earth and its territories, preferred trading with species they understood better. Is this okay? Raka asked, suddenly uncertain. Lily set patches on the blanket pile and sat down beside him. It's better than the refugee center, she said. It's quiet here. I like quiet. Raka's quarters had one small food preparation unit and a cooling storage container that held exactly 3 items: a bottle of Valiant whiskey, some dried meat strips, and a container of something that had probably expired 2 weeks ago. She stared at the contents and realized she had no idea what human children ate. Are you hungry? She asked. Lily nodded. I haven't eaten since breakfast. They serve breakfast at the refugee center, but lunch is only for people who have been processed into the system. Anger flared in Raka's chest. They've been starving this child. She grabbed her credit chip. We're going to the market, she announced. The station market occupied 3 levels in the central core. Vendors from dozens of species selling everything from fresh produce to recycled ship parts. Lily's eyes went wide as they walked through the crowded aisles. She stared at Turan merchants with their crystalline skin, at Valerian mechanics with their 6-fingered hands, Atron enforcers towering over the crowd on their double-jointed legs. I've never seen so many different people, Lily breathed. On the freight runs it was mostly just me and my parents. Sometimes we'd dock at stations, but I had to stay on the ship. Raka guided her to a food vendor run by a human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. What do human children eat? Raka asked bluntly. The vendor smiled. How old is she? 7, Lily said, and I like almost Everything except mushrooms, the vendor. Packed a container with items Raka didn't recognize, fresh fruit some kind of gray mixture, protein bars designed for human metabolism. She threw an extra at no charge, winked at Lily and told Rocket to come back if she needed advice. They returned to the quarters with enough food for several days. Raka watched as Lily ate, noting how the child savored each bite, made the meal last. She'd been hungry for a while. Raka realized, not just today. After eating, Lily started asking questions. Why are your scales blue? Can you breathe fire? Where do dragons come from? Why don't you live with other dragons? Raka answered despite herself. Explained that her scales were the color of her bloodline, that only certain dragon subspecies could produce flame, that her people came from a colony world called Drar in the Outer Rim territories. Why don't you live there anymore? Lily asked. Raka was quiet for a long moment. I made a choice my colony didn't agree with. They exiled me. Dragons don't accept members who break tradition. What choice? I refused to marry someone I didn't love, Raka said. My colony elders had arranged a political union. I said no. Among my people, that's an unforgivable offense. Lily thought about this. My mom always said the bravest thing you can do is choose your own life, even when it's hard. Raka felt something shift in her chest. Diana Reed sounded like someone she would have respected that night. After Lily fell asleep at her blanket nest, Raka sat in the dim light, reviewing the data chip. She went through every file, every log entry, every voice message. Diana's voice spoke from the recordings, warm and practical, noting cargo weights and route times. Then Raka found hidden files, encrypted entries disguised as personal messages. She broke the simple encryption easily. Her dragon mind built for pattern recognition. Diana Reed had been investigating smuggling operations. She documented everything. Routes, cargo, manifests, even names of corrupted officials. The last entry was dated 2 days before her death. Someone had killed her to keep her quiet, and now Raka was responsible for her daughter. The lower dock smelled like fuel and old metal. Raka kept Lily close as they navigated through the maze of repair bays and storage units. Mechanics worked on ships in various states of disrepair. Sparks flying from welding torches, the clang of tools against hull plating, echoing through the cavernous space. Stay next to me, Raka said. Don't wander. Lily nodded, her hand wrapped around 2 of Raka's claws. Patches was tucked safely in her backpack, just his head poking out. They found bricks in Base 17, half buried in the engine compartment of a small cargo runner. The Valyrian's 6-fingered hands moved with practiced precision, sorting through a tangle of power conduits. His skin had the pale blue tint common to his species, and his eyes were covered by magnification goggles that made him look like an insect. Bricks, Raka called out. The mechanic pulled himself out of the engine compartment and pushed his goggles up onto his forehead. His real eyes were small and dark, set deep in a face lined with years of close work. Yeah, he looked at Raka, then down at Lily. I don't work on biologicals. Try the medical bay. We're not here for repairs, Raka said. We need information about a freight hauler named Diana Reed. Grix's expression changed. The casual indifference vanished, replaced by something cautious and sad. Diana, I heard about what happened. Raiders got Her ship out in J447. Bad business, you knew her? Lily asked. Quietly, Griggs looked down at the child, his face softened. Yeah, kid, I knew your mom, she was good people. Always paid on time, never tried to cheat me on repairs, she brought me pastries once, said I looked too skinny. He shook his head. I'm sorry for your loss. Rocco pulled out a small data tablet and showed Gry the encrypted file she'd found. Diana was investigating something, smuggling operations using legitimate freight haulers as cover. Do you know anything about this? Brix's eyes went wide. He looked around the repair bay, checking who might be listening. Not here, he said quietly. Meet me at the central hub maintenance. Access section C7. In 1 hour, come alone. I can't leave the child, Raucus said. Then bring her, but make sure you're not followed. 1 hour. Later, they stood in a dimly lit maintenance corridor. Griggs had arrived from a different direction, moving quickly and quietly for someone his size. Diana came to me about 4 months ago, Gry said, keeping his voice low. She noticed irregularities in shipping weights, cargo that didn't match manifests. At first she thought it was just sloppy record keeping, but then she started tracking it, found patterns. What kind of patterns? Rocca asked. Same ships, same routes, same discrepancies, always machine parts or industrial supplies listed, always weight ratios that didn't make sense. Diana was smart. She realized someone was using freight hauler networks to move illegal cargo, weapons, narcotics, probably things. The operation was sophisticated. Used multiple haulers who didn't know about each other. Diana started documenting everything. She was going to report it to the Galactic Commerce Authority, but she died first, Lily said. Softly, the raid wasn't random. Griggs confirmed. I told her to be careful too. Just delete the files and forget she'd seen anything, but Diana said people were getting hurt, that illegal weapons were ending up in conflict zones, that someone had to stop it. Rocca felt her scales prickle with anger. Diana Reed had been trying to do the right thing, and she'd been killed for it. Who runs the operation? Rocca asked. They call themselves the Chain Syndicate. I don't know much about them. They're careful, compartmentalized, but they have reach. Officials on their payroll. Enforcers who make problems disappear, like Diana. Rocca said grimly. Like Diana. Griggs agreed. He looked at Lily. I am sorry. Could, your mom was brave. They got her killed. They left through different exits. Rocca led Lily through a series of corridors, doubling back twice to make sure no one was following her. Dragon senses were on high alert, watching for threats, listening for footsteps that matched their pace. She almost missed him, a crayon forcer, following 3 corridors back, staying just out of direct line of sight. Rocca caught his reflection in a polished section of wall. Lily, she said quietly, we're being followed. When I tell you to run, you head for Bay 17. Find Gry. Stay with him until I come get you. What are you going to do? Lily whispered. Something. Dragons are good at. Rocca said. Now run. Lily took off, her small legs pumping. The CR saw her go and made a choice, kept following Rocca instead. Smart. The dragon was the real threat. Rocca led him into the maintenance tunnels where the lighting was poor and the corridors narrow. Dragon territory. Her people had evolved in caves and underground spaces. Darkness was home. The Kryn was bigger than her, heavier with natural armor. plating and forearms that could tear through metal, but he was used to fighting in open spaces in light with room to maneuver. Raka dropped to all fours and charged, her claws found purchase on the metal grating. She hit him low, used her weight and momentum to knock him off balance. They crashed into a wall and Raka's jaws snapped near his throat. "Who sent you?" she growled. The CR struggled, but she had him pinned, one of her claws pressed against the vulnerable joint in his armor. Plating the syndicate, he gasped. "They know you're asking questions. They know about the kid. Tell them to back off." Raka said, "Tell them the dragon isn't interested in their business." The CRN laughed, a harsh sound. "You don't understand. The syndicate owns this station. Security council members, dock workers. You can't fight them. Nobody can." Raka increased the pressure slightly. "I'm not nobody. I'm an exiled dragon with nothing to lose. Tell them that." She released him and backed away, ready to fight if he came at her, but the cringe just sat against the wall, rubbing his throat. "You're making a mistake," he said. "They'll kill you both." "They can try," Raka said. She found Lily safe with bricks in the repair bay. Child ran to her, wrapped her arms around Raka's scaled waist. "Are you okay?" Lily asked. "I'm fine," Raka said. She looked at Grix. "We need help. Can we count on you?" Griggs was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Diana was my friend. I should have helped her when she asked. Maybe I can make that right by helping her daughter." Walking back to her quarters, Lily asked, "Are we going to stop running?" Raka looked down at the child. Something had changed in the past few days. This wasn't just about keeping Lily safe anymore. This was about justice, about finishing what Diana started. "Yeah," Raka said. "We're going to fight." Raka spread the data files across her quarter. Single table. GRs had broad equipment, decryption tools, and analysis software that could track patterns across shipping networks. Lily sat cross-legged on a blanket pile, watching them work. "We need more than just evidence," Gry said, manipulating a holographic display. "We need protection. The syndicate has corrupted station security. If we go to them, we disappear." "What about the Galactic Commerce Authority?" Raka asked. Diana was planning to contact them. "There's an inspector scheduled to arrive in 3 days." Gry said. "Routine audit. If we can get the evidence to her, she'll have jurisdiction to act. 3 days is a long time when people are hunting you." Raka muttered. "Can I help?" Lily asked. Quietly, both adults turned to look at her. The child had been so quiet that Raka had almost forgotten she was there. "This isn't a game, kid," Gry said gently. "It's dangerous." "I know it's dangerous," Lily said. "My mom died for this. I want to help finish what she started." Raka studied the child, 7 years old, orphaned, facing down criminals who'd killed her parents, but her eyes held determination, not fear. "What did you have in mind?" Raka asked. Lily stood and walked to the table. "My mom always made backup copies of important things," she said. "You never keep all your data in one place. If the syndicate comes after us, they'll take the data chip. We should copy everything and hide it in different locations." Grix's eyes widened. "The kid's right. Distributed storage. Even if they get one copy, the others survive." Over the next hour, they created 5 copies of Diana's evidence. Brix knew hiding spots throughout the station, places where maintenance workers stored personal belongings, small spaces the Syndicate wouldn't think to check. We also need allies, Raka said. Diana mentioned other freight haulers in her logs, people who work the same routes. Maybe they saw things too. Griggs pulled up a list. There were 5 haulers who regularly ran those corridors. Diana's gone. 2 more died in raids over the past 6 months. Also not random, Raka said grimly. That leaves 2, Owen Park and Sarah Williams, both still operational. Both docked at the station right now. They found Owen first. He was a grizzled man in his 50s, gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, scars on his hands from years of manual cargo loading. He listened to their story in the privacy of his ship's cargo hold. I knew something was wrong, Owen said finally. Too many raids, too many good haulers dying, but I kept my head down, got a crew to think about. You know, families depending on me. We're not asking you to fight, Raka said, just to testify. Tell the Commerce Authority what you've seen. Owen looked at Lily. You're Diana's kid. Lily nodded. She talked about you, Owen said. Show me pictures once, said you were the reason she got up every morning, why she kept flying dangerous routes. The money was for your education, your future. He rubbed his face. I'll testify. Diana deserved better than what she got. Sarah Williams was harder to convince. She was younger, maybe 30, with the cautious eyes of someone who'd survived by trusting no one. Her ship was newer, cleaner, clearly well maintained. I don't know anything, Sarah said when they approached her. I run my routes, mind my business. Diana Reed did the same thing, Raka said, until she couldn't ignore what she was seeing. And look what happened to her, Sarah shot back. I'm sorry about your mom, kid, but I'm not dying for a principle. What if you're next? Lily asked quietly. What if they decide you've seen too much? What if one day you raiders attack your ship and there's no one left to ask questions? Sarah's expression hardened, but after a long moment she sighed. What do you need from me? With 2 witnesses willing to talk and evidence secured in multiple locations, Raka began to feel like they had a chance. But that night everything changed. She was teaching Lily basic self-defense in their quarters, how to fall without getting hurt, how to make noise to attract attention, where to strike if someone grabbed her. Human children were fragile compared to dragon younglings, but they learned quickly. Your species adapts fast, Rocco observed. You pick up new skills faster than most. My mom said humans are good at surviving, Lily replied. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we figure things out. Rocco was about to respond when she heard it. Footsteps in the corridor outside, too many of them moving with purpose. She smelled weapon discharge residue, the acidic scent of recently fired plasma rifles. Lily, the ventilation shaft, Raka said quietly. Now the child didn't argue. She grabbed patches and ran to the ventilation grate Raka had loosened days ago, just in case. Raka helped her inside, then pulled herself up behind just as the door exploded inward. 4 armed enforcers stormed into the room. They were mixed species, professional with Milidar Ryra weapons. The syndicate wasn't taking chances there in the vents. One of them called, call it in, lock down this section. Raka and Lily crawled through the narrow passages. The ventilation system connected throughout the residential level, but Raka knew they didn't have much time. The syndicate would seal the exits, flood the vents with gas, or just wait them out. Where Are we going? Lily whispered. Somewhere they won't expect, Raka said. She led them down through maintenance shafts and service tunnels, following routes she'd memorized during her months of solitary drinking. Dragons had excellent spatial memory, could map territory after a single pass. It was a colony skill meant for remembering cave systems and territorial boundaries. They emerged in a decommissioned cargo bay on Level 3. Griggs was already there. His tools spread around him. He'd been contacted by Owen, warned that the syndicate was making their move. They've locked down the station, Gry said. No ships in or out. Security is searching every level. They're saying you kidnapped a human child, that you're dangerous. Of course they are. We could give them the data, Lily said. Tell them we'll delete everything if they let us go. They'll kill us anyway, Raka said. We know too much, so what do we do? Lily asked. Raka looked at the child. Lily was scared. Raka could see in her eyes the way her hands trembled slightly, but she wasn't panicking. She was thinking, adapting, surviving. We do what your mother would have done, Raka said. We finish this. We make sure everyone knows the truth. The Commerce Authority inspector arrives in 2 days, Gry said. We just have to survive until then. 2 days, Raka repeated. Against an entire criminal network that owns this station. Lily stood up straight, clutched patches to her chest. My mom fought them alone. For months. We're not alone. We have each other. Raka felt something warm in her chest. This child, 7 years old and orphaned, was braver than most adults she'd known, braver than Raka had been when facing exile. You're right, Raka said. We're not alone, and that makes all the difference. The cargo bays emergency lighting cast everything in deep red. Raka sat with her back against a storage container, listening to the station's circulation systems hum through the walls. Lily slept nearby, exhausted from hours of running and hiding. Gry monitored security channels on a handheld scanner, tracking the search patterns. They're covering every level, Gry whispered. Systematic sweeps. They'll find us eventually. Not if we move first, Raka said. She'd been thinking, planning, using a strategic mind her colony elders had tried to train into her. The syndicate expects us to hide. They're hunting for prey. What else would we do? Grix asked. Become predators, Raka said. She pulled up a schematic of the station on her data tablet. Where's the central communications hub? Level 15 central core. Why? Because that's where we broadcast Diana's evidence. Every screen on this station, every personal device, every public terminal. We flood the system with the truth. Grix's eyes widened. That's suicide. The hub will be heavily guarded, which is why we create a distraction. Raka said. She studied the station layout, traced routes with one claw. We make them think we're trying to reach the docking bays, pull their forces there, then we hit the communications hub while they're out of position. How do we make them believe we're going for the docks? Raka smiled, showing teeth. We let them catch someone trying to steal a ship. An hour later, Owen Park triggered every alarm in Docking Bay 7. His ship powered up unauthorized and began undocking procedures. Security forces converged on the location, believing they had the fugitives cornered. Meanwhile, Raka, Lily, and Grix moved through maintenance passages toward the central core. They stayed in the blind spots. Gry knew the routes maintenance workers used to avoid the crowded main corridors. Are you scared? Lily whispered too. Raka terrified, Raka admitted, but fear is useful. It keeps you sharp. They reached the communications hubs. Service entrance, 2 guards stood. Watch armed with plasma rifles, Raka studied them from around a corner. Calculated angles and distances, I'll handle them, she said. Grix, you get the door open. Lily, you stay hidden until I signal. Be careful, Lily said. Raka moved before she could second guess as herself. She came around the corner at full speed, low to the ground, using her dragon agility to close the distance before the guards could react. She hit the first one with her shoulder, felt his armor crack under the impact. Her tail whipped around and caught the second guard's legs, swept him off his feet. Neither guard got shot off. Raka had trained for combat as a young Ling before she'd rejected that path in favor of trade negotiations. The skills came back like muscle memory. Grix opened the service door. They dragged the unconscious guards inside and sealed the entrance behind them. The communications hub was a maze of servers and broadcast equipment. Griggs went to work immediately, his 6 fingers flying across multiple interfaces. Lily stood, watched by the door, her small frame pressed against the wall. How long? Raka asked. 5 minutes to access the broadcast systems, another 2 to upload and encrypt the transmission so they can't shut it down. Raka heard footsteps in the corridor outside, heavy boots, multiple sets. They'd realized the docking bay was a diversion. We don't have 5 minutes, Raka said. Then I work faster, Gry muttered. The door shook as something hit it from outside. Plasma fires scorched the metal. They were cutting through. Lily, get behind the servers, Raka ordered. Stay low. The child obeyed without question. Raka positioned herself between the door and Gry, ready to fight. The door exploded. Inward smoke filled the room. Through it came a man Raka recognized from Diana's files. Calvin Cross, the Syndicate's operations chief on Ed Station. He was human, well-dressed, holding an expensive plasma pistol like he knew how to use it. 4 more enforcers flanked him, weapons ready. The exiled dragon and the orphan child. Cross said, his voice was smooth. Educated, you've caused me considerable trouble. Good, Raka growled. I'm going to make you an offer, Cross said. 1 time only. Give me the child and all copies of the data. I'll give you a new identity, enough credits to disappear into the outer rim territories. You can drink yourself to death in peace. And Lily. Cross shrugged. The child knows too much. You understand how this works. Raka felt rage build her chest, hot and pure. I understand that you're threatening a 7-year-old girl whose parents you murdered. Her parents were collateral damage, Cross said. Diana Reed should have minded her own business. Just like you should walk away now. Not happening, Raka said. Then you'll die. Here, Cross raised his weapon. I get you a chance, Raka charged. The distance between them vanished in a heartbeat. Cross fired, but his shot went wide. Raka crashed into him, drove them both backward into his enforcers. Plasma fire lit up the room, scorching walls and equipment. Raka fought like her ancestors had, claws and teeth and raw strength. She felt impacts against her scales, burns from near misses. Pain was distant, unimportant. All that mattered was keeping them away from Lily and Jix. She caught one enforcer's arm and broke it. Her tail struck another. The chest sent him flying into a server Stack Cross tried to line up a shot at her head, but she twisted, used an enforcer as a shield. Done, Gry shouted, broing now, every screen in the communications hub lit up. Diana Reed's evidence began transmitting, flooding every device on the station. Shipping manifests, encrypted messages, financial records, everything. Cross screamed in rage. He fired wildly, hitting equipment, servers, anything he could target, but it was too late. The data was already spreading, replicating across the station's network faster than anyone could stop it. Then Raka heard new voices in the corridor, professional, authoritative, not syndicate enforcers. Galactic Commerce Authority, drop your weapons. Inspector Helen Ward entered with a full security team. She was a tall woman with gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen too much corruption to be surprised by more. You're early, Grix said weakly. We intercepted concerning communications about a station lockdown, Ward said. Decided to arrive unannounced. She looked across. You're under arrest, you and everyone else on this transmission. Raka collapsed against the server. Stack she hurt everywhere, burns and cuts and bruises, but they'd done it. Diana's evidence was public. The truth was out. Lily ran to her, threw small arms around Raka's neck. You're hurt, the child said, voice thick with tears. I'm effing Rackled, everything hurt. We one little one. Your mother would be proud. The medical bay smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Raka lay on a bed designed for larger species, her scales covered in regeneration gel, where plasma fire had burned through. The human doctor had been fascinated by dragon physiology, kept asking questions. Raka was too tired to answer properly. Lily sat in a chair beside the bed, patches in her lap, refusing to leave. She'd been there for 6 hours through treatment and observation and the endless parade of officials who wanted statements. You snort should rest, Raka said. Her voice came out rough, scratchy from smoke inhalation. So should you, Lily replied, but you keep talking to people. Inspector Ward entered carrying a data tablet. She looked tired but satisfied, expression of someone who just closed a major case. The last arrests were made an hour ago, Ward said. 17 syndicate members, including Cross for corrupted station officials, 2 security officers. The operation is dismantled. Good, Raka said. We found evidence of trafficking beyond just weapons, narcotics, stolen goods, even people. Ward's expression darkened. Your wife's investigation was more comprehensive than we realized. She saved lives by documenting everything. She wasn't my wife, Lily said quietly. She was my mom. I apologize, Ward said gently. Your mother saved lives. The Commerce Authority will make sure everyone knows what she did. Will they put her name on something? Lily asked, like a memorial. Ward smiled. I'll personally ensure Diana Reed is recognized, perhaps a commendation for civilian heroism, and prosecution witnesses receive compensation. You'll have a trust fund for your education, your future. Lily looked at Raka. I don't need money. I just needed people to know the truth. Ward studied them both. The temporary guardianship filing you made, do you plan to continue it? Raka and Lily exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed it. Everything had happened so fast, survival taking priority over planning. I'd like to, Raka said carefully, if Lily wants that. Yes, Lily said immediately. Please, then I'll authorize Permanent guardianship, Ward said. Cross-species adoption has precedent. You'll need to establish stable housing. Demonstrate ability to provide care, but given what you've accomplished together, I don't foresee issues. After Ward left, Lily climbed carefully onto the medical bed and curled against Raka's side. The dragon wrapped one arm around the child, mindful of her injuries. Are you sure about this? Raka asked. I am. I don't have a home world, a colony. Any of the things dragons are supposed to provide their younglings, you have. You, Lily said. That's enough. Raka felt something break open in her chest. She'd spent months drowning in isolation, convinced her exile meant she'd lost everything worth having, but this small human had shown her differently. Family wasn't about species or tradition, it was about choice, about choosing to protect and nurture and belong. 2 weeks later they stood in the docking bay, watching the edge station slowly receded through the viewport. Griggs had helped them find passage on a transport heading to the inner systems, where opportunities were better for someone with Raka's investigation skills. Several freight haulers who'd respected Diana had offered them work, not charity. Raka made that clear, but legitimate contracts, shipping runs where a dragon's attention to detail and a child's adaptability would be assets. Owen approached them at the boarding ramp. He handed Lily a small box. This was your mother's, he said. Navigation tools, some personal items. I kept them safe, hope someday I could return them. Lily opened the box. Inside was a star chart marked with Diana's handwriting, a compass that had belonged to Lily's grandmother, and a hollow image of Diana holding infant Lily. Thank you, Lily whispered. Sarah Williams gave him a credit chip. Emergency fund, she said gruffly. Don't spend it unless you need it, and if you ever need a recommendation, call me. They boarded the transport. Raka had purchased a small cabin, just enough space for two. Lily immediately claimed the lower bunk and arranged her blankets into a nest. Dragon style, Patches sat on the pillow, button eyes watching over everything. Where are we going exactly? Lily asked. Station Harmony, Raka said. It's a trade hub in the inner systems. The Commerce Authority recommended me to a security firm that investigates shipping fraud. Apparently dragons make good investigators. We have our own place. Eventually, first we'll stay in temporary housing while I establish employment, then we'll find something permanent. Lily was quiet for a moment. Will you teach me about dragons, about your colony, your traditions? Raka sat on the lower bunk beside her. I'll teach you everything I know, but I was exiled for breaking tradition. I'm not the best example of dragon culture. You're the only example I need. Lily said. You chose to be yourself instead of what others wanted. That took courage. Your mother had that same courage. Raka said she could have ignored what she saw, stayed safe, but she chose to fight for what was right. She taught me that the best thing you can be is kind and brave. Lily said. I think you're both of those things. Raka pulled the child close. A few months ago she'd been sitting in a corner booth drinking away her isolation. She convinced herself that exile meant the end of everything meaningful, that without her colony she had no purpose, no future. Then a 7-year-old human had asked if she was a real dragon. We'll make a good team, Raka said. Dragons are strategic thinkers, good at patterns and planning. Humans are adaptable, find Creative solutions. What about when we disagree? Lily asked. Then we'll figure it out together. That's what families do. The transport jumped to faster than light travel. Stars stretched into lines outside the viewport, and Edge Station vanished. Behind them, ahead lay the inner systems, new opportunities, a fresh start. Lily fell asleep against Raka's side, exhausted from the excitement of departure. Raka sat in the dim cabin light, one clawed hand gently stroking the child's curly hair. She thought about her old colony, about the elders who'd pronounced her exile. They believed cutting her off from Dragon society would break her, teach her the cost of defiance, but they'd been wrong. Exile had led her to this small human, to understanding that family wasn't defined by blood or species or tradition. It was defined by choice, by choosing to protect, to nurture, to stand together against the dark. Raka had been called outcast, exile, dishonored, but sitting in this transport cabin with Lily sleeping peacefully beside her, she realized she'd never felt more at home. We're not alone anymore, she whispered, echoing the words she'd spoken in that cargo bay, and we'll never be alone again. Outside, the stars rushed past, carrying them toward whatever came next.